The sun had barely risen over Quantico Marine Corps base, casting sharp golden lines across the asphalt and steel of the sprawling training grounds. The day promised heat, but no one cared about the temperature. Something far more thrilling was about to unfold, something that would be whispered about in mess halls, training tents, and barracks long after the morning had passed. Captain Elena Ramirez stood at the far end of the rifle range, her silhouette outlined by the early sunlight. She was calm, composed, almost statuesque, yet there was a fire in her dark eyes that betrayed the focus burning within. Her custom-built sniper rifle rested lightly against her shoulder, and her hands, though steady, betrayed the rhythm of a mind already calculating wind, distance, and trajectory. Around her, senior officers of the United States Marine Corps were gathered, men and women with decades of experience, ranks adorned in shining brass and silver, and reputations that had survived the harshest battlefields. They were here for a demonstration, a routine training exercise that had been elevated into spectacle simply by Elena's presence. It wasn't the first time she had been asked to display her marksmanship, but today was different. There was tension in the air, palpable and electric. It wasn't just about hitting targets. It was about proving something. To them, yes, but more importantly, to herself. "Captain Ramirez," said Colonel Whitman, a tall, broad-shouldered officer whose reputation preceded him. "We've heard you've made some claims about today's target. Care to share them?" His voice carried a hint of skepticism, a teasing challenge that cut through the hum of the morning. Elena didn't flinch. Her lips curved slightly into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "No one here," she said slowly, letting her words hang in the air like a gauntlet thrown, "can make that shot. Except me." The laughter that followed was polite at first, then mocking. A few officers exchanged looks, eyebrows raised, clearly amused by the boldness of a woman daring to challenge not just their skills, but their pride. Whispered comments echoed across the asphalt. "She's confident, I'll give her that. Is she serious? Bold or foolish?" But Elena ignored it all. She had grown accustomed to skepticism, not because of arrogance, but because of reality. Time and again, she had been underestimated, not just by officers, but by anyone who assumed that her place in a male-dominated environment was contingent on luck rather than skill. She had learned early that confidence, discipline, and relentless preparation were her only allies. Today, she would prove them all right or wrong in a way they would never forget. Her target was a mechanical construct placed at an extreme distance, a challenging silhouette partially obscured by foliage and varying terrain, moving slightly with every gust of wind. On paper, the shot was nearly impossible. Conditions that would trip even the most seasoned sniper were now compounded by the presence of a live audience and the subtle, insidious weight of expectation. Every Marine present knew this was more than practice. It was a test of nerves, precision, and courage. Elena crouched behind her rifle, her eyes scanning the horizon. She made minute adjustments, accounting for the wind, the sun's glare, and even the soft tremor of adrenaline that ran through her hands. She could hear the whispers of the officers behind her, the subtle rustle of cameras being adjusted, the low murmur of other Marines straining to catch every moment. But in her mind, all of that fell away. There was only the shot. Her finger rested lightly on the trigger, never pressing, only ready. She exhaled slowly, her breathing synchronized with the rhythm of the world around her. A leaf fluttered across the path of the target, and she waited, calculating the precise moment when wind, distance, and gravity would align. She had performed hundreds of similar calculations, not in front of an audience, but alone, in training tents, in combat zones, in the dead of night. This shot, she knew, required not just skill, but patience. Colonel Whitman stepped closer, curiosity and skepticism etched into his weathered features. "You know," he said, half joking, half serious, "a lot of people would call that impossible." Elena didn't flinch. She didn't even blink. "Impossible is a challenge word," she said softly, almost to herself. "It only exists until someone proves it wrong." Her eyes remained locked on the target. The crowd had gone silent now, sensing that something extraordinary was about to occur. Even the wind seemed to pause, the air heavy with anticipation. Marines who had served in some of the most extreme combat situations held their breath, because instinct told them that what Elena was about to do was beyond ordinary skill. It was art. It was focus. It was a quiet storm contained within a single human being. She exhaled again, adjusting her scope with the precision of a watchmaker. Every muscle in her body tensed, yet she moved with the grace of someone entirely in control. She was in that rare state known among snipers as flow, where time slows, perception sharpens, and instinct guides action. She had reached it countless times in war zones, in training, and now, with all eyes on her, she would reach it again. Her first shot cracked across the range like the echo of a distant drum. Dust kicked up around the target. Gasps erupted behind her. She didn't move. The second shot followed just as cleanly. 2 perfect hits. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The impossible was happening before their eyes. Elena's mind, however, was elsewhere. She was already anticipating the next move, already calculating wind shift, already centering herself for the remaining shots. The audience saw a woman standing in the sun, a rifle in her hands, seemingly calm. What they didn't see was the years of preparation, the endless practice, the discipline that had forged this moment. This shot wasn't just a display of skill. It was a testament to resilience, courage, and determination. By the time she made the final adjustment, the silence around her had transformed into a profound respect. Not even a word could break it. Her fingers squeezed the trigger, and the shot rang out, clean, precise, undeniable. The target was hit exactly as she had calculated. 4 seconds of focus, 4 seconds of tension, and one perfect outcome. As she lowered her rifle, the range erupted in applause, but Elena's eyes remained calm, almost unreadable. She didn't need accolades. She didn't need acknowledgement. She had done what she set out to do. Prove that skill, focus, and relentless preparation could overcome even the weight of doubt. Colonel Whitman approached, shaking his head in disbelief. "Captain Ramirez," he said slowly, I don't know what to say. That was beyond belief." Elena simply smiled faintly. "Respect the craft," she replied softly, "not the noise around it." And with that, she turned, walking away from the line, leaving behind a range full of stunned Marines. A story already beginning to take root as legend, the story of the Marine captain who boasted no one could make that shot, and then did, in a way that would echo across Quantico for years to come. Before Captain Elena Ramirez became the Marine who could silence 4 colonels in seconds. Before the name whispered through the corridors of Quantico, there was a girl growing up on the sun-baked streets of El Paso, Texas. Elena was not like the other children in her neighborhood. While most chased soccer balls or skateboarded across cracked sidewalks, she spent hours in quiet observation, studying everything with meticulous attention. She examined the flight of a bird, the arc of a thrown rock, and the way shadows shifted across the walls of her family's modest home. Her father, retired Marine Sergeant Major Hector Ramirez, had a presence that seemed to fill the room even when silent. He rarely raised his voice, but when he spoke, every word carried weight. He was a man of discipline, of routine, of expectation, and he saw something unusual in his daughter from the moment she could walk. While other girls played with dolls or paint sets, Elena was fascinated by precision, mechanics, and strategy. She built miniature targets, adjusted toy crossbows, and spent long hours calculating angles and distances for projects most adults would have dismissed as trivial. Perfection isn't luck, Elena, her father would say, eyes dark with intensity. Perfection is patience, observation, and control. You can't control the world, but you can control your actions. And that will set you apart. Her mother, a high school teacher named Maria, nurtured a softer side of her nature. Maria encouraged creativity, curiosity, and compassion, always balancing the sharp edge of discipline with warmth. She taught Elena that strength wasn't just physical or technical. It was moral, emotional, and intellectual. Together, her parents formed the framework of a young girl whose ambitions were as disciplined as they were fearless. By age 10, Elena had demonstrated uncanny focus. She could sit for hours, practicing calculations on trajectory, wind, and distance with a homemade slingshot, never missing her mark. Her neighborhood peers grew frustrated with the slow pace of her games, but she didn't care. For Elena, success was never about instant gratification. It was about mastery. Even in simple things, she sought control and precision. School presented its own challenges. She was one of the few girls in advanced math and science classes, often surrounded by boys who underestimated her abilities. Rumors would float through classrooms. She can't lift that much weight. She's not fast enough. Girls don't belong in certain programs. Yet Elena never reacted with anger or defiance. She reacted with results. Grades, projects, and later, athletic achievements silently spoke for her. While the world underestimated her, she quietly built a foundation of confidence that would later serve her in the military, a world far less forgiving than school hallways. Her adolescence was also marked by moments of personal loss and challenge. A younger cousin, someone she had taught to aim a bow and arrow in the backyard, was injured in an accident. Elena blamed herself, even though the circumstances were beyond her control. She vowed never to let hesitation, lack of preparation, or distraction cost someone else again. It was a lesson that would later translate to battlefield decisions, where hesitation could mean the difference between life and death. At 16, Elena knew she wanted more than a small-town life. She wanted challenge, structure, and a path that demanded excellence. Inspired by her father and driven by her own ambition, she applied to the United States Naval Academy. It was a grueling process. Written exams, physical tests, interviews. The academy was designed to weed out anyone unprepared for the demands of service. Many doubted a teenage girl from El Paso could survive the rigorous program, but Elena refused to let doubt dictate her path. She trained relentlessly, often waking before dawn to run drills in the quiet streets or studying military strategy into the night. The academy was an awakening. Elena faced skepticism, subtle prejudice, and occasional overt challenges from classmates and instructors alike. Some openly doubted her abilities. Others questioned whether she belonged. She was smaller in stature than many of her peers and often found herself paired with heavier, taller cadets during combat simulations. Yet Elena discovered an advantage in precision, observation, and patience, qualities her male peers often overlooked. While strength and speed were celebrated, she realized that discipline, focus, and intellect could exceed brute force. Her training emphasized marksmanship early on, and she found herself drawn to sniper courses. It wasn't the glamour or the mystique of long-range combat that attracted her, but the precision, the mental focus, and the responsibility. A sniper had to understand distance, wind, terrain, and human behavior in ways few others did. Elena excelled. She memorized manuals, practiced calculations during off hours, and honed a steady hand through hundreds of drills. She became known among instructors for her uncanny ability to anticipate target, movement, and environmental shifts, a skill that would later define her legendary status. Yet despite her growing reputation, challenges persisted. Some instructors doubted her resilience in stressful conditions. Others questioned her ability to lead men in combat. But Elena had learned to convert doubt into fuel. She thrived under scrutiny. Where others might falter under judgment, she became more methodical, more precise, and more confident. Her father's words echoed in her mind constantly. Control yourself first. Respect comes second. Her first deployment solidified her reputation. Stationed in a conflict zone, she demonstrated calm under fire, saving fellow Marines with precise shots during critical engagements. Field reports noted her extraordinary patience and composure, often highlighting how she could make split-second decisions with life-or-death consequences. Slowly, the whispers of skepticism faded. Elena was no longer just the girl from El Paso. She was a Marine whose skill was undeniable, whose courage was visible in every action. By the time she returned stateside, Elena had not only earned the respect of her peers, but had developed a quiet authority. She was a sniper, an instructor, a leader. Yet she remained humble, always mindful that perfection was never final. It was a pursuit. She continued to train, to study, and to refine her skills, knowing that one day, a moment would arrive to test everything she had learned. That moment would come at Quantico, years later, under the blazing sun, with senior colonels watching, skeptical and curious. The girl who had once practiced with homemade slingshots, who had run before dawn in El Paso, who had honed her body and mind through relentless discipline, was now Captain Elena Ramirez. And though few in the audience knew it yet, every glance, every breath, every steady heartbeat she displayed on the range was the culmination of years of preparation, sacrifice, and unwavering focus. In that quiet morning heat, as she stood poised to take a shot no one else could, it wasn't bravado that guided her. It was a lifetime of deliberate choices, rigorous practice, and an unshakable belief in her own abilities. The audience, the colonels, even the most skeptical Marines, were about to witness the payoff of a girl who refused to miss, and whose aim had been forged long before anyone ever dared to challenge her. By the time Captain Elena Ramirez returned from her first deployment, she had already made a quiet name for herself among her peers. But the Marine Corps was not a place that handed respect lightly. Valor in the field mattered, but in garrison, in training halls and officer briefings, perception often carried as much weight as skill. Elena knew that. She had learned early that her reputation would never be inherited. It would have to be earned, constantly, visibly, and decisively. Her arrival back at base was met with a mix of curiosity, admiration, and thinly veiled skepticism. Word of her battlefield precision had spread, though some still assumed it was luck or chance rather than methodical practice. Among fellow snipers, whispers circulated. She's good. Maybe too good. Among senior officers, opinions were divided. Some quietly acknowledged her talent. Others saw her growing confidence as a challenge to their authority. But Elena paid little attention. She had learned to move forward on her own terms, letting results speak louder than words. Her daily routine became a rigorous balance of training, leadership, and self-refinement. Dawn found her at the shooting range, recalibrating her rifle, adjusting for environmental factors, and pushing herself beyond standard drills. Midday was spent mentoring younger Marines, teaching them patience, precision, and the mental discipline that she had cultivated from childhood. Evenings were devoted to study, ballistics, terrain analysis, sniper tactics, and leadership principles. Every moment was an opportunity to strengthen her edge. Failure was never an option. Hesitation was an enemy. Yet the challenges Elena faced were not solely technical. In the Marine Corps, a female sniper of her caliber was rare. Her presence, while undeniably competent, drew scrutiny that male counterparts rarely experienced. Every decision she made, every command she gave, was dissected. Some officers questioned her authority outright, whispering that she could not handle the stress of leading men in combat or training scenarios. Others suggested her promotions were the result of favoritism or public relations optics. Elena had learned to navigate these currents with a combination of quiet defiance and relentless performance. She didn't respond with anger. She responded with perfection. Her next deployment provided both validation and further challenge. Tasked with leading a small reconnaissance unit in a volatile region, she faced situations that tested her judgment under pressure. One night, her team was pinned down by insurgent fire while attempting to extract an injured local informant. Calmly, Elena coordinated covering fire while taking calculated long-range shots to neutralize immediate threats. Every decision was measured, every action precise. Her team survived without casualties. Her superior officers documented her performance, noting both technical skill and the composure required for life-and-death situations. Elena had proven herself again, this time under the harshest scrutiny imaginable. Upon returning stateside, she was promoted to captain and assigned as a sniper instructor at Quantico. This position brought a new set of challenges. For the first time, her reputation preceded her, and expectations were high. Junior Marines idolized her, eager to emulate her precision and mental focus. Senior officers scrutinized her techniques, occasionally questioning the methods she employed in training. But Elena thrived. She had discovered that teaching others was a new form of mastery, one that required patience, empathy, and the ability to inspire confidence even in those who doubted themselves. It was during one of these training sessions that the seeds of her legendary impossible shot began to take root. Senior colonels, visiting the base to observe sniper training protocols, casually challenged her, questioning whether any of the instructors could perform under pressure. Elena accepted their scrutiny silently, not as a confrontation, but as an opportunity to demonstrate skill, discipline, and resolve. She had come to understand that her role was not only to perform, but to embody the values she wished to instill: precision, patience, and quiet authority. However, maintaining this level of excellence was not without cost. Elena often found herself alone in the late hours, practicing shots beyond standard drills, analyzing every minor variation in environmental conditions, refining her mental approach to focus and calm under stress. She carried a personal weight, the burden of expectation, the constant need to prove herself in a system that both celebrated and doubted her simultaneously. But in those quiet moments, alone with her rifle and the fading light, Elena found clarity. She realized that mastery was not a single achievement, but a continuous pursuit, one that required dedication beyond ordinary limits. Her peers began to take notice. Even those initially skeptical of her ability to lead began to see the method behind her calm exterior. She didn't command with loud authority. She earned it through example. Precision in every shot, measured decisions, unwavering composure. These became the hallmarks of her leadership. Senior colonels who once doubted her capability now consulted her expertise in training protocols and field strategy. Yet Elena remained grounded. Recognition was not the goal. Mastery and responsibility were. Still, envy and tension simmered beneath the surface. There were officers who bristled at her confidence, questioning whether a woman could maintain authority under the scrutiny and pressure of elite Marine operations. Some attempted subtle tests, assigning her the most challenging targets, observing her handling of high-stakes scenarios, even attempting to provoke errors in judgment. But Elena had faced scrutiny all her life. From childhood games that demanded patience, to rigorous academy drills, to real combat operations, she had learned to thrive under pressure. Each challenge only reinforced her focus and sharpened her skills. It was in this crucible of expectation and quiet competition that Elena's abilities reached legendary status. Her reputation as a sniper, who could execute shots others deemed impossible, spread through the base, whispered in hallways, and echoed in mess halls. Fellow instructors, recruits, and even visiting officers began to recognize a pattern. Elena Ramirez wasn't merely competent. She was exceptional. And what made her exceptional wasn't just her technical prowess. It was the combination of patience, discipline, composure, and an unyielding commitment to mastery. By the time the infamous day arrived, the day of the impossible 4-target challenge, Elena was ready, though she did not yet realize it. Years of preparation, every early morning and late night, every moment of quiet observation, every battle-tested lesson had led to this moment. She carried not arrogance, but confidence born of experience and relentless refinement. Standing at the rifle range, her eyes scanning the horizon, she was no longer just a Marine returning from deployment. She was the embodiment of every challenge she had overcome, every doubt she had faced, and every skill she had honed. Her fellow Marines watched in awe as she prepared to take a shot that had been declared impossible. Elena knew that this was more than a demonstration of marksmanship. It was a validation of a lifetime of preparation, resilience, and unshakable focus. And though the crowd waited, some with skepticism and some with hope, Elena's calm composure signaled the truth. Results, not words, would speak for her. The impossible shot wasn't just about hitting a target. It was about proving that mastery, discipline, and courage could overcome doubt, prejudice, and fear. It was a culmination of everything she had learned, from the dusty streets of El Paso to the chaos of deployment, from early lessons in patience to years of relentless practice. And for Elena Ramirez, this was only the beginning of a story that would be told and retold across the Marine Corps for decades to come. The morning at Quantico was deceptively calm. A faint breeze swept across the open range, stirring the grass and rattling the edges of the metal targets. The sun had climbed higher, casting harsh shadows that made precision even more difficult. The officers gathered in the observation area murmured among themselves, some skeptical, some intrigued. Among them were 4 colonels, the most senior in attendance, each with decades of experience, each accustomed to being the final authority on matters of skill and strategy. Captain Elena Ramirez crouched behind her rifle, scanning the horizon. Her mind was a map of calculations, wind shifts, bullet trajectory, target movement. To the casual observer, she appeared calm, almost meditative. But inside, a storm of focus and anticipation roared. This was the moment that would define her not just as a sniper, but as a leader and a Marine. Years of preparation, decades of training, and a lifetime of discipline were about to converge in a single impossible challenge. Earlier that week, the colonels had issued a seemingly casual challenge, which Elena had accepted with quiet confidence. 4 targets, each at a different distance and partially obscured by terrain, were to be engaged sequentially. Each target represented not just a technical difficulty, but a test of nerve, composure, and mental acuity. It was designed to be impossible. Any error, hesitation, or miscalculation could spell failure. And yet, failure was not an option for Elena. It never had been. The colonels approached the line, their boots crunching against the gravel, their eyes sharp and calculating. One of them, Colonel Whitman, known for his biting critiques and unflinching standards, leaned toward Elena and said with a smirk, "Captain, no one here thinks that shot can be made. You do realize that, don't you?" Elena didn't flinch. She adjusted her grip on the rifle and replied evenly, "I realize the target is difficult. I also realize it is not impossible." Her tone was calm, neutral, but her words carried weight, subtle, undeniable authority that made even the skeptics pause. She had learned that confidence without arrogance, backed by preparation, carried more weight than any rank or title. The crowd of Marines and officers settled into a hush. Cameras were raised. Phones were poised to record what many assumed would be a failure. Elena took a deep breath, inhaling the dry, warm air, letting it fill her lungs, letting her mind enter that rare state of complete focus. In sniper training, this state was called the calm eye, a moment where time slowed, senses sharpened, and instinct guided precision. She had reached this state countless times before, in training, in combat, but never with such a captive, expectant audience. Her eyes scanned the first target, partially hidden behind a set of barriers, and at a distance, few had attempted to engage in controlled conditions. She could see the subtle movement, a mechanical mimic of a human target, shifting slightly in the breeze. It was a difficult shot, the kind most would refuse. Yet Alana's years of calculation, her patience, her focus, allowed her to see the path others could not. She whispered to herself the mantra she had repeated since childhood: steady, silent, sure. Colonel Whitman leaned closer, trying to unsettle her. "Are you certain you want to take this first one?" he asked, a challenge hidden in every syllable. Elena only blinked slowly, her expression unreadable. Her hands tightened slightly on the rifle, the barrel steady, the sight aligned with the target. She exhaled. One smooth, deliberate motion, and the first shot rang out. A crack of thunder against the backdrop of morning air, followed by the subtle thud of impact. The target was hit dead center. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Elena didn't react. She didn't celebrate. There was no time. She had 3 more targets to engage, and each was more difficult than the last. The second target was partially obscured behind rolling terrain, the wind picking up and threatening to alter trajectory mid-flight. Elena adjusted her aim slightly, accounting for a subtle gust from the left. She focused not just on the rifle or the target, but on the rhythm of the world around her, the shifting air, the slight tremor of the earth underfoot, the almost imperceptible motion of the mechanical target. She waited for the perfect moment, aligning her breathing, her heartbeat, and her sight in perfect harmony. The second shot cracked. Impact. Bullseye. Another ripple of astonishment moved through the officers. Even the skeptics, those who had doubted her ability to make the first shot, began to lean forward, eyes wide, silent respect forming behind skepticism. The third target was the most challenging yet, the furthest, partially hidden behind a cluster of metal barriers, simulating cover, and angled slightly away. Every sniper had to make a decision: wait for a better line of sight or adjust for risk. Elena chose the calculated risk. She took a breath, steadying her grip, aligning her scope. Her finger rested lightly on the trigger, almost weightless, yet deliberate. She waited for a small gust to pass, and the target to shift just enough. And then, with surgical precision, she fired. The shot struck perfectly. Now only one remained. The fourth colonel's target, the farthest and most obscured, awaited her. Some in the crowd whispered doubts aloud. "She'll miss this one," muttered an officer who had earlier doubted her skill. Elena ignored them, as she had learned to do. In that moment, there was no audience, no noise, only calculation and instinct. The wind shifted slightly, a subtle imperfection that could have been fatal. Elena adjusted instantly, relying on years of experience, thousands of hours of training, and countless exercises that had demanded exact precision. Her mind was a machine, calculating trajectory, wind, and distance in microseconds. She squeezed the trigger. The rifle cracked. Impact. Dead center. The crowd was stunned into silence, a tension so thick it could be cut with a knife. 4 colonels, 4 targets, and 1 flawless execution. 30 seconds had passed, yet it felt like eternity. Elena lowered her rifle slowly, her expression calm, unreadable. She didn't smile, didn't revel in the achievement. She simply exhaled, steady, in control. Colonel Whitman approached her, disbelief etched into every line of his face. "Captain, That was." He stopped, unable to articulate his astonishment. Elena tilted her head slightly, a faint glimmer of satisfaction in her eyes. "Respect the craft," she said softly, "not the rank." The other officers, some initially skeptical, now regarded her with genuine awe. It wasn't just the shots that impressed them, but the composure, the confidence, and the precision under pressure. Elena had proven that skill, preparation, and focus could defy expectation, and in doing so, she had made history, if only quietly at first. As she walked away from the firing line, her rifle slung casually over her shoulder, whispers began to spread. Marines exchanged glances. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others nodded in respect. That morning, at Quantico, Captain Elena Ramirez had done what few believed possible. She had taken on an impossible challenge, faced the doubt of 4 colonels, and emerged flawless. Her legend was born, not in boastful words, but in the quiet, undeniable language of skill, precision, and unyielding discipline. The air on the Quantico range was heavy with anticipation. Every Marine present seemed to lean slightly forward, even subconsciously, as if drawn into the tension, like iron to a magnet. The 4 colonels, the most senior officers in attendance, were motionless, eyes fixed on Captain Elena Ramirez. She crouched behind her custom sniper rifle, the barrel gleaming faintly in the sunlight, yet her expression remained unreadable. To any observer, she was calm, collected, a model of disciplined poise. But inside, her mind was alive with calculation, analysis, and focus. Elena had been in similar states many times before, in combat zones and in training exercises. But nothing matched the intensity of performing under the scrutiny of those whose judgment mattered most, not just her superiors, but the weight of every expectation she carried with her, from childhood through her Marine career. Every target she faced carried symbolic weight, proof of her skill, affirmation of her dedication, and validation of every moment she had spent honing precision. She inhaled slowly, centering herself. Her breathing became rhythmic, a metronome for her focus. In sniper training, she had learned that mental control was as crucial as physical accuracy. A single misjudgment could ruin a shot. A single tremor of the hand, a single lapse in attention, could cost her credibility, or worse. She had practiced the art of mental clarity for years, isolating distractions, silencing doubt, and entering a state snipers called the calm eye. The first target came into view, partially obscured by rolling terrain, and angled in such a way that even a seasoned marksman would hesitate. Elena's mind calculated distance, bullet drop, wind speed, and even subtle thermal currents rising from the sun-heated earth. She ignored the whispers of doubt behind her, the barely audible murmurs of officers guessing whether she would succeed. Every factor she could control, she did. Every factor she could anticipate, she calculated. Her finger rested lightly on the trigger, barely pressing against the tactile resistance of the mechanism. Her breath synchronized with the rhythm of the world around her. The slightest misalignment could have catastrophic consequences. And yet, as she exhaled slowly, the world seemed to narrow. The chaos, the noise, the judgments, all disappeared. There was only the target, the rifle, and the precise path her bullet would take. The first shot cracked through the morning air, the sharp sound momentarily deafening in its impact. Dust kicked up from the target, confirming the hit. Elena felt a small surge of calm satisfaction, though she did not allow herself any outward expression. 1 down, 3 to go. Each shot demanded renewed focus. The victory of the first was irrelevant until all were completed. The second target presented new complications. A gust of wind had shifted subtly, and a cluster of obstacles partially concealed the target's torso. Elena recalibrated instinctively, adjusting her aim by mere millimeters. Her hands remained steady despite the heat rising in her veins. Years of repetition had trained her muscles to respond faster than conscious thought, allowing her to compensate for minute changes in environment with almost instinctual precision. She exhaled again. The shot left the barrel and struck perfectly. The target responded exactly as she anticipated, dust and mechanical movement signaling success. The murmurs around her shifted from doubt to astonishment. Even the colonels, seasoned veterans of countless operations, leaned forward slightly, recognition dawning in their eyes. Elena did not allow herself a smile or any hint of triumph. Her mind had already moved to the next calculation, the next target. The third target was the most challenging yet. It lay behind partial cover, simulating a human adversary using terrain to hide. Distance amplified the difficulty, and subtle shifts in wind threatened to throw off her aim. Her body remained still, but internally her mind raced through calculations, adjustments, and contingencies. She reviewed her own heartbeat in her mind, synchronizing trigger pull to the exact moment her body was most steady. Every nerve and fiber of her being was tuned to precision. She waited, letting instinct guide her. Timing was everything. If she acted too early, the shot could miss. Too late, and she would lose the opportunity entirely. Elena had faced such decisions countless times in combat, but the stakes here were different. The audience's eyes, the weight of rank, and the symbolic importance of each hit created a pressure unlike any battlefield she had ever known. Yet pressure did not intimidate her. It refined her. The third shot cracked through the air. The target responded exactly as intended, collapsing in a controlled motion. A ripple of disbelief passed through the audience. Elena allowed herself the briefest acknowledgement of satisfaction, a slight exhale, a mental note of precision. One remained. The fourth target, belonging to the most skeptical colonel in the group, was the farthest and partially obscured. This was the true test. All the prior skill, discipline, and focus had led to this singular moment. Elena adjusted her rifle for distance, factoring in wind drift, trajectory drop, and even the subtle heat currents rising from the sun-warmed terrain. She envisioned the path of the bullet from chamber to target, tracing it in her mind with exactitude. Her finger lightly pressed against the trigger. Her breathing slowed further, and for a fraction of a second, the world seemed suspended. Time compressed. The distant chatter faded. She focused entirely on alignment, on the invisible thread connecting her intent with the physics of the shot. Years of preparation, childhood precision exercises, academy training, battlefield experience, all converged in this moment. A single pull of the trigger would confirm or deny her mastery. She squeezed. The rifle cracked. The bullet struck true, hitting the target dead center. Dust and debris lifted in a small plume, signaling the final hit. Elena lowered the rifle slowly, exhaling deeply. She had done what no one else in that range, perhaps no one in the course, could have achieved. 4 targets, 4 perfect hits, all under extreme pressure. 30 seconds of intense calculation, control, and focus had culminated in flawless execution. Around her, the world erupted in astonishment. The colonels, initially skeptical, now regarded her with a mix of awe and reluctant respect. Fellow Marines whispered, some shaking their heads, others nodding quietly, recognizing the precision and discipline displayed before them. Elena did not smile or gloat. There was no need. The shot had spoken for her, louder than words, louder than rank, louder than doubt. In those moments following the final hit, Helena allowed herself a brief reflection. This was not about proving her superiority over others. It was about proving the culmination of years of training, discipline, and focus. Every calculation, every sacrifice, every hour of preparation had mattered. She had earned respect not through words, but through action, through demonstrating mastery under conditions that few could endure. And as the crowd absorbed the reality of what had just occurred, Elena Ramirez quietly stood, slinging her rifle over her shoulder, her calm exterior unshaken. The legend of the four-shot captain had been born that day, a story not of boastful bravado, but of precision, patience, and the unshakable focus of a Marine who refused to miss. The final bullet had barely settled into the target when silence descended across the Quantico range. It was the kind of silence that carried weight, thick, almost tangible, heavy with disbelief and awe. Every Marine present, from recruits to seasoned veterans, froze in that moment. The four colonels, men and women accustomed to commanding operations and evaluating the impossible, were equally stunned. Their eyes, wide and unblinking, tracked the calm figure of Captain Elena Ramirez as she lowered her rifle, her expression composed and unreadable. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The air seemed to vibrate with tension. Then, slowly, murmurs began to ripple through the audience, whispers of astonishment and admiration. Marines exchanged incredulous glances, some shaking their heads in disbelief, others nodding in quiet acknowledgement of the skill they had just witnessed. This was not a display of luck, not a fluke. It was the result of decades of preparation, every calculation and every discipline culminating in 30 seconds of flawless execution. Colonel Whitman was the first to break the silence, stepping toward her with an expression caught somewhere between awe and stunned respect. "Captain Ramirez." His voice faltered, words failing to convey the magnitude of what he had just seen. I don't know what to say." That was beyond belief. Elena tilted her head slightly, offering a calm, faint smile, her eyes betraying only a trace of satisfaction. "Respect the craft," she said softly, her voice steady. "Not the rank." The words struck harder than any bullet, resonating with officers and Marines alike. It was a quiet reminder that mastery, discipline, and preparation transcended hierarchy. The four colonels, each used to authority and command, found themselves in an unusual position, acknowledging a subordinate not merely for obedience or rank, but for sheer skill and precision. Behind her, the other Marines began to murmur louder. Conversations that had once contained doubt now carried awe. "Did she really?" whispered one recruit, eyes wide. "Yes," replied another, voice hushed, "and it was perfect." Even those who had doubted her abilities from the outset found themselves re-evaluating their assumptions. Elena had not only completed the impossible, she had redefined what was considered possible in the minds of everyone present. Colonel Whitman stepped closer, extending a hand, not in confrontation, but in acknowledgement of mastery. "I have to admit," he said, shaking his head slowly, "I thought that challenge was impossible." "I underestimated you?" Elena took the hand, firm yet calm. "It's not impossible," she replied simply. "It's preparation, focus, and practice. Anyone can succeed if they dedicate themselves to mastery." The other colonels followed suit, some nodding silently, others exchanging glances as if silently agreeing on the extraordinary nature of what had transpired. This was not a typical training exercise. This was a masterclass in precision, patience, and calm under pressure. Elena had proven something far more profound than technical skill. She had demonstrated leadership through action, inspiring respect not through command, but through competence. Journalists and photographers who had been called to document the event now swarmed the range, cameras flashing. Yet Elena remained composed, acknowledging them only with the briefest nod. She did not seek the spotlight, nor did she crave recognition. Her victory was personal, earned through years of discipline, dedication, and unwavering focus. The attention was incidental, a consequence of excellence, not a motivation. As the crowd began to recover from its initial shock, whispers of the feat spread like wildfire. 4 colonels, 4 shots, 30 seconds, one Marine muttered, shaking his head in disbelief. No one else could do that. The story of the day would travel fast, through mess halls, training tents, and barracks. It would be repeated, embellished, and celebrated not for bravado, but for the precision, courage, and mental fortitude displayed by Elena Ramirez. The practical implications of her demonstration were also undeniable. Senior officers began to discuss how her techniques could be incorporated into training programs, how her calm, analytical approach to extreme pressure could serve as a model for other Marines. Elena had not only performed an impossible feat, she had set a new standard, a benchmark against which his skill, focus, and composure would now be measured. In the quiet moments that followed, Elena stood alone at the firing line, reflecting on the culmination of her journey. Every early morning in El Paso, every late night at the Naval Academy, every combat deployment and every solitary hour of practice had led to this point. She allowed herself a brief smile, a small acknowledgement of a mission accomplished. Yet even in that quiet satisfaction, she knew the journey was far from over. Mastery, she reminded herself, was never complete. There were always higher standards, greater challenges, and opportunities to improve. Meanwhile, the colonels gathered, exchanging remarks in subdued tones. "She has focus like no one I've ever seen," one remarked. "I've never witnessed such precision under pressure," said another. Their initial skepticism had been replaced by a grudging admiration, tempered by the recognition that Elena had redefined what it meant to be a Marine sniper, and what it meant to command respect through skill rather than rank. Across the range, junior Marines whispered among themselves, some shaking their heads in disbelief, others taking mental notes. The event had not just demonstrated precision. It had served as a lesson in leadership, discipline, and focus. Elena's actions had spoken more powerfully than any lecture, any order, or any formal instruction. She had embodied the principle that true authority stems from competence and integrity. As the sun climbed higher, casting sharper shadows over the firing line, Elena slung her rifle across her shoulder and began walking away from the range. Her movements were calm, deliberate, and unhurried. Behind her, the echoes of astonished whispers, applause, and muttered praise lingered in the air. She did not look back. She had made her point, and she knew it had been heard loud and clear. For the colonels, for the Marines, and for the observers, the event would be remembered as the day Captain Elena Ramirez demonstrated what few believed possible. 4 colonels, 4 impossible targets, 30 seconds, a feat that would become legend not for its spectacle, but for the demonstration of focus, patience, and mastery under pressure. In that moment, Elena Ramirez's reputation was solidified. She had earned not just the respect of her peers, but the admiration of an entire corps. And yet, true to her nature, she allowed no pride to cloud her mind. She had achieved something extraordinary, but she knew that mastery was a journey, not a destination. Every shot, every decision, every moment of preparation had contributed to this outcome. And as she walked away, the murmurs of astonishment and respect followed her, echoing across the base and into the minds of all who had witnessed it. The story of the Marine captain who boasted no one could make that shot, and then did, flawlessly, had just begun. In the weeks that followed the Quantico Range demonstration, the legend of Captain Elena Ramirez spread far and wide across the Marine Corps. The story wasn't one of boastful bravado or a single heroic act. It was a testament to the relentless discipline, mental focus, and skill that had defined her life. From the mess halls to the barracks, junior Marines whispered her name in reverent tones. Instructors began referencing her techniques during training sessions, emphasizing her composure under extreme pressure as a model to emulate. Elena herself did not seek recognition. She continued her routines, as though nothing extraordinary had occurred. Dawn still found her on the range, recalibrating her rifle, practicing shots in varied conditions, and mentoring younger Marines. The difference now was in the subtle acknowledgement that followed her: respectful glances, nods of approval, quiet deference from those who had once doubted her. She understood that respect earned through action carried far more weight than any formal commendation or verbal praise. Her influence extended beyond marksmanship. Officers who had observed her now incorporated her methods into leadership training. They emphasized patience, preparation, and the mental discipline necessary to perform under pressure. Alana's calm authority became a model for others, proof that leadership was as much about composure and focus as it was about rank or command. Young Marines began seeking her advice not just on technical skills, but on strategy, mental resilience, and how to remain composed in moments of extreme stress. Yet Elena's personal reflections remained grounded. She spent long evenings walking alone along the base, reflecting on the events and their significance. She thought of her father, whose lessons in patience and precision had guided her from childhood. She remembered her mother, who had taught her that true strength came not only from skill, but from integrity and empathy. Every accomplishment she achieved, every recognition she received, was built on those foundations. And in the quiet moments, she understood that her journey was far from over. Mastery, she reminded herself, was never a destination. It was a continuous pursuit. The story of the 4 impossible shots became a teaching tool across the course. New recruits studied the event in classrooms and during training exercises, analyzing the mental preparation and focus required to execute each shot. Discussions emphasized not just technical skill, but psychological control, decision-making under pressure, and the importance of preparation. Elena had inadvertently created a living lesson, one that would continue to inspire and instruct Marines for generations. Despite the acclaim, Elena remained deeply aware of the responsibility her skill carried. She understood that the precision she displayed on the range was not merely a personal achievement. It was a standard to uphold in every engagement, every training exercise, and every decision she would make. A single lapse in judgment or composure could compromise not just her reputation, but the lives of those she led. This awareness tempered her pride with humility, reinforcing the discipline and focus that had brought her this far. Her peers, too, felt the impact of her demonstration. Senior officers who had previously doubted her authority now sought her insight on tactical exercises and sniper instruction. Junior Marines found in her a model of excellence and a mentor who demanded the best from herself and others. Even those who were initially skeptical began to emulate her approach: careful calculation, methodical preparation, and unwavering composure. Elena's influence had grown beyond her immediate circle. She had become a quiet force, shaping the culture of precision and professionalism in the Corps. Outside the base, her story began to capture the attention of military historians and enthusiasts. Articles were written, interviews conducted, and video clips circulated, all highlighting the extraordinary nature of the demonstration. Yet for Elena, the recognition remained secondary. Her satisfaction came not from accolades, but from the knowledge that her training, focus, and discipline had been proven in a way that few could question. She valued mastery for its own sake, not the fleeting praise that often accompanies extraordinary feats. Still, the experience left a lasting impression on her personally. The Quantico range had been more than a test of marksmanship. It had been a crucible of character. Elena understood that true skill demanded more than technical ability. It required mental resilience, patience, and an unshakable belief in one's preparation. She had demonstrated this to herself and to others, and in doing so, she had set a standard that would endure long after the echoes of gunfire faded. In quiet moments, Elena reflected on the journey that had brought her here, from the streets of El Paso to the rigorous Naval Academy. From her first deployment to the disciplined routines of sniper training, she recognized the sacrifices, the early mornings, the long nights, and the relentless pursuit of perfection. Every challenge, every setback, every moment of doubt had been a step toward this achievement. And while the feat at Quantico would become a defining moment in her career, she knew it was merely one milestone in a lifelong pursuit of mastery. Her relationship with her fellow Marines evolved in the wake of the demonstration. Where once she had been a figure of skepticism for some, she now inspired quiet admiration and respect. Her mentorship became more sought after, her guidance more valued. Marines of all ranks sought to learn from her example, not simply in marksmanship, but in leadership, focus, and the psychological discipline necessary to perform under extreme pressure. Elena's influence was subtle yet profound, shaping not just individual careers, but the culture of the unit itself. By the end of the year, Elena's story had become a cornerstone of Marine instruction. Trainers cited her demonstration in classes on focus and mental discipline. Leadership workshops highlighted her calm composure under scrutiny, and young snipers aspired to emulate her precision. The event at Quantico was no longer just a story. It had become a living example of what could be achieved through dedication, preparation, and unwavering discipline. Yet for Elena, the lesson remained deeply personal. She understood that mastery was a journey, not a destination, and that every challenge, every training exercise, every deployment, every high-stakes moment was an opportunity to refine skill, strengthen focus, and test resilience. The Quantico range had been a moment of public triumph, but her true achievement lay in the years of preparation, the discipline cultivated in solitude, and the quiet, unyielding pursuit of excellence. And so, Captain Elena Ramirez continued her work, not seeking fame, but seeking mastery. She trained, mentored, and led, her influence extending far beyond the range. The story of the 4 impossible shots had become legend, but it was her quiet discipline, her unwavering focus, and her relentless pursuit of excellence that left a lasting impact on all who witnessed her journey. In the end, it was not just the demonstration of skill that mattered, but the example it set, that true mastery was earned, that leadership was demonstrated through action, and that focus, patience, and discipline could overcome even the most daunting challenges. Elena Ramirez had become more than a Marine. She had become a symbol of what could be achieved when preparation, courage, and precision intersected. Months had passed since the demonstration at Quantico, yet the memory of Captain Elena Ramirez's flawless execution of the 4 impossible shots lingered like a legend whispered through the halls of the Marine Corps. Stories circulated in mess halls, training facilities, and barracks. Recruits spoke of it as if it were a fable. Veterans recounted it with respect tinged by awe, and officers referenced it as a benchmark for skill, focus, and composure under extreme pressure. Elena, however, remained the same disciplined, focused Marine who had trained quietly for years. Recognition did not change her. She understood that mastery was a lifelong pursuit, not a trophy to be displayed. Despite her preference for quiet, the Marine Corps recognized her achievement formally. A ceremony was arranged, attended by senior officers, distinguished guests, and fellow Marines. Awards were presented, commendations read aloud, and speeches highlighted not just the technical skill of the demonstration, but the example of leadership and discipline that Elena embodied. Yet even amid applause and accolades, she remained composed. To her, the honors were a reflection not of personal glory, but of the culmination of years of preparation, sacrifice, and relentless pursuit of excellence. During the ceremony, Colonel Whitman, still clearly impressed by what he had witnessed months before, approached her. "Captain," he said, his tone a mixture of pride and respect, "you've set a new standard, not just for snipers, but for all Marines. What you've done today will inspire generations. Elena nodded, offering the faintest smile. I only hope it encourages others to pursue mastery, not shortcuts or recognition. That is what truly matters. Her words resonated, capturing the essence of her philosophy. To Elena, true skill was silent. It spoke for itself through action, not through words or accolades. She had spent her life cultivating precision, focus, and discipline, and the demonstration at Quantico was simply a visible manifestation of that pursuit. Recognition, though gratifying, was secondary. What mattered was the standard she had set, the example she had created, and the inspiration she had provided to those who aspired to excellence. In the months that followed, Elena's influence expanded beyond her immediate unit. Training programs began incorporating her techniques, emphasizing mental focus, composure under pressure, and deliberate, methodical practice. Junior Marines sought her guidance, not merely for technical skill, but for insights into leadership, resilience, and the psychology of performance. Even seasoned officers consulted her, recognizing that her approach to preparation and execution was exceptional, regardless of gender or rank. Elena had become more than a Marine. She had become a symbol, a living example of what could be achieved through discipline, focus, and dedication. Yet even amid the growing recognition, Elena remained introspective. She continued to reflect on the journey that had brought her here, the dusty streets of El Paso, where she first practiced precision, the disciplined rigor of the Naval Academy, the intense stress of her first deployment, and the countless hours spent perfecting her craft. She understood that each challenge, each moment of doubt, and each failure she had overcome was a stepping stone toward mastery. The demonstration at Quantico was not a peak, but a waypoint, a visible marker along a lifelong path of relentless improvement. Her personal life, too, evolved in subtle ways. Colleagues and peers began to see a deeper side of Elena, not just a masterful sniper, but a mentor, a thoughtful leader, and someone who understood the value of nurturing talent in others. She spent time with young Marines, guiding them in ways that went beyond the technical, teaching patience, mental resilience, ethical decision-making, and the importance of composure under stress. Her influence became as much about shaping character as it was about honing skill. Even the media attention, which had grown over time, was treated with the same calm composure Elena displayed in every aspect of her life. Journalists sought interviews, military historians requested insights, and video clips of the Quantico demonstration circulated widely. Yet Elena never sought to glorify herself. She consistently emphasized preparation, discipline, and focus, making clear that the demonstration was the result of years of meticulous work and not a sudden feat of heroism. She reminded those who followed her story that mastery is earned through dedication, and recognition is a consequence, not a goal. One afternoon, as she walked alone along a quiet stretch of the base, Elena reflected on the journey she had undertaken. The sun was low, casting long shadows across the range where she had once executed the impossible. She thought of the young girl in El Paso who had spent hours calculating angles, observing movement, and practicing precision. That girl had carried the same curiosity, discipline, and relentless drive that now defined Captain Elena Ramirez. The demonstration at Quantico had not only tested her skill, it had validated a lifetime of preparation and focus. Her thoughts then turned to her peers, her mentors, and her students. She realized that her achievement was not hers alone. It was the product of lessons learned from her parents, guidance from instructors, support from fellow Marines, and the shared challenges of every training exercise and deployment. Mastery, she understood, is never a solitary pursuit. It is the culmination of countless influences, each shaping the individual and contributing to their readiness for the defining moment. As the years passed, the story of the Quantico demonstration became part of Marine Corps' lore. It was recounted in classrooms, during leadership seminars, and in informal conversations between Marines seeking inspiration. Captain Elena Ramirez's name became synonymous with precision, discipline, and composure under pressure. Her legacy was not built on notoriety, but on the tangible example she had set, a standard for what could be achieved when preparation met opportunity, when discipline overcame doubt, and when focus became mastery. In quieter moments, Elena continued her work with the same intensity and dedication as ever. She trained, mentored, and led, understanding that the journey of mastery is never complete. Her story, immortalized by the Quantico demonstration, served as both a reminder and a challenge that excellence requires relentless effort, that leadership is demonstrated through action, and that courage and composure define not only a Marine, but a true master of their craft. And though her name would live on as a legend, whispered with reverence by those who had witnessed or learned of her feat, Elena remained grounded. She measured her success not by accolades or applause, but by the lives she influenced, the standards she set, and the continuous pursuit of perfection that defined every day of her career. The legacy of the 4 impossible shots, the demonstration that had captivated the Corps, was now inseparable from her identity, a symbol of what one Marine could achieve through unwavering focus, relentless discipline, and an unyielding commitment to mastery. As the sun set over Quantico, casting long golden shadows across the firing range, Captain Elena Ramirez stood alone, rifle slung over her shoulder, eyes calm, expression serene. She had proven the impossible, inspired countless others, and carved her place in history. Yet she knew the pursuit was endless, the journey ongoing. Mastery was not a destination. It was a path, and Elena Ramirez would walk it every day, quietly, relentlessly, and with unwavering precision. And so, the story lived on, not just as a tale of extraordinary skill, but as a testament to discipline, focus, and the quiet, unshakable power of preparation. Captain Elena Ramirez, a Marine who took down 4 colonels in seconds, became more than a legend. She became a symbol of what it meant to refuse limits, to pursue mastery, and to inspire others through action, not words.